Politico has a story, and I want to read this for you because they're capturing something, but not quite right. Let me read part of this to you. Frustrations over how kids are taught about systemic racism have turned once sleepy school board elections into hyperlocal skirmishes with the power to polarize how a new generation learns about American history and grow the ranks of Republican politicians. These conflicts aren't just playing out in states where Republican-controlled legislatures passed laws restricting how race and racism are discussed in schools. Angry parents have filled school board meetings in Virginia, Minnesota, and New Hampshire with protests that sometimes end in arrests, and shadowy groups successfully backed candidates running against critical race theory in New York in May. Tapping into the trickle-up anger over racism education is now a unifying force in campaigns for Congress, governor, and among Republicans with presidential ambitions. But it's the local races outside the spotlight in elections that attract just a few hundred voters that may define what students learn in the classroom for years to come. The movement has the potential to bring a stronger GOP as once uninvolved conservative candidates flood local government and party races, seeking a platform to fight critical race theory, student mask mandates, and other culture war issues centered on kids. While such elections are often nonpartisan, the Republican Party sees a rich opportunity to build a pipeline of new political candidates. Have you noticed, with everyone out of Afghanistan, how the media, with Joe Biden's polling cratered, has gone into one-sided culture war commentary? I mentioned being on CNN last night, and for the 20 minutes before I was on, there was an uninterrupted cavalcade of woke pro-abortion advocates condemning Texas, not a single pro-life voice. It's even worse on MSNBC. They've gone absolutely bat poop crazy. It's all one-sided. It's all tilted to the left. It's all designed to make conservatives look bad and progressives look good, to make Democrats look good and Republicans look bad. It's all designed to distract from Joe Biden's falling poll numbers and remind people the real enemy is not the Taliban or the virus, but the Republicans. I mean, have you noticed that we're back to culture war? We've got Afghanistan. They are literally going to set up a new government in Afghanistan on September 11th. And the media would much prefer to bellyache about the Texas law, the only reason of which that it's still in effect is because the plaintiff sued the wrong people. They would rather talk about that and blast Republicans for amplifying critical race theory with shadowy dark money groups than talk about Joe Biden's failures. It's par for the course. And here is one that Politico gets right and gets wrong. They're making it a Republican versus Democrat thing. Now, I need to go on a tangent here for a moment. I think one of the reasons the media has done a disservice in how it covers COVID and the vaccine is they've made it tribal. It is us versus them. It is Democrats versus Republicans. It is most specifically Trump voters versus non-Trump voters. If you go back a year to September and October of last year, you will find ample Democratic voices saying, I'm not going to trust a vaccine that Donald Trump's involved with. It just so happens to be that Donald Trump lost, Joe Biden got elected, and now the very same Democrats who are casting aspersions on the vaccine are now like, oh yeah, this is Joe Biden's vaccine. I'm 100% in favor of Joe Biden's vaccine. Let's go for it. It's not a coincidence. They've made it tribal and partisan. They themselves have done this. Now, the result is that you can't look at the critical theory situation in schools without it being about Republicans. And they work very hard. Here, back in May, is a story also from Politico that they themselves link to. An organization with no clear leader called Save Our Schools has inserted itself into school district politics and an upcoming board election in Smithtown, Long Island, stirring up grievances over issues such as white privilege and charging that school officials are indoctrinating students with an anti-police agenda. The group circulated a newsletter several weeks ago that, within a wide-ranging litany of misinformation, falsely connected school boards and district leaders to left-leaning billionaire George Soros while condemning efforts to address racial equity and social justice. It is a microcosm of a national movement against discussions of systemic racism in schools and educators' attempts to rectify racial discrepancies, which conservatives have painted as a bid to immerse students in liberal values. Similar rhetoric has been deployed in school districts in Virginia and Texas, state legislatures in Idaho and Oklahoma, and in talking points among prominent Republicans like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is featured in a video on the Long Island Group's website. It's all sinister, isn't it? It's all those icky, nasty Republicans doing this. Actually, in Massachusetts, and in New Hampshire, and in Minnesota, and in Virginia, it tends to be liberal parents who are just as concerned. Because they know how the end game is here. They know it. The end game is your academically gifted student is denied a scholarship because of the color of their skin. That's the end game here. Or we're going to tear down standards so that no one can get a scholarship, because we're not going to have standardized tests, because they're racist, apparently. The standardized test is racist. It's a damning indictment on public schools. Not only do they want all the kids to mask up, half of them want to go virtual learning. They want to shut down schools again. It's progressive politicians holding parents and kids hostage to their whims. A lot of parents have decided to homeschool their kids, so now the progressive groups are coming after the homeschoolers. They're going after the charter schools. The fact that the Politico and national media wants to make this a Republican thing, it's not. I assure you, go to your local school board, you're going to see parents who are reliable Democratic voters mad as hell at the local school board for indoctrinating their kids and telling their white children they're racist and their black children that they're oppressed and there's not a darn thing they can do about it. It transcends partisan lines. One of the big problems we have in this country at this moment is a national media that cannot move beyond rote partisan boxes. The media itself sees everything as Democrat versus Republican, and not everything is. The data overwhelmingly shows that parents, particularly white parents, but a large number, and overwhelmingly Asian parents, and a large number of black parents, are really concerned about critical theory in schools. The media downplays the black parents who show up at the school board and argue against it. And they elevate the parents who are most in favor of it. Much like they do, they've taken a side, much like the abortion conversation. You rarely see pro-lifers on CNN or MSNBC making counter-arguments. No, it's the Republicans, and they're just stirring stuff up, and it's not a big deal. No, actually, it's a very big deal. And why are they concerned? Well, the Politico kind of gives it away. The movement has the potential to build a stronger GOP as once uninvolved conservative candidates flood local government and party races seeking a platform to fight critical race theory, student mass mandates, and other culture war issues centered on kids. While such elections are often nonpartisan, the Republican Party sees a rich opportunity to build a pipeline of new political candidates. Yes, you see, a lot of these races are nonpartisan. But it's Republicans who are running against critical theory, you see. Actually, no, it's not. They're actually Democratic candidates who are running against critical theory. In nonpartisan races, well-known Democrats are mad about it as well. Now, one more paragraph here. Even though most Arizona school board races are not for at least a year, Pam Kirby, who runs school board boot camps for the Arizona GOP, has already started offering a new round of her classes because of demand. More than 200 people have completed the program, and 80 more are on the wait list. Conservatives from Oregon, Texas, New York, Indiana, and other states have asked her to run similar programs for them. About 25% of the people from the classes actually go on to run, while others will instead join their local GOP operations, often as precinct committee members. Kirby estimates more than 1,500 committee members have been appointed in Maricopa County since February. It's unheard of, Kirby says. It's off the charts. Why is it a bad thing that parents are inspired to get involved. Why is it a bad thing that parents may be galvanized against critical theory? The media treats it as some sinister conservative plot, when actually what it is a left-wing ideology that is being used to get into schools to indoctrinate. I have played the audio of the various woke teachers who talk about education really is political. Education really is about indoctrinating people. And they embrace people like Robin DiAngelo and her anti-whiteness campaign where she says nonsense like this.
White people are invested in the racist status quo for lots of reasons. And I think it's unfortunate, but I do think we have to see it as in our own best interests. So a couple things have to happen there. One is, it's a little more abstract, but it's like you almost have to dismantle your very identity to the core and rebuild it. Because even before I took my first breath, as my mother carried me in pregnancy, the forces of race were operating on us.
The forces of race were operating on us. She was a racist in the womb, and that's what they're teaching in schools. And parents across the board, even parents who are not Republican, have had enough of this. And the media spin on it as, well, that's just the Republicans, and now they're going to run candidates for office. Nah, you should be concerned about this many people fired up, but you're kind of ignoring the big nugget here. It's not just Republicans and it's not just conservatives. It's Democratic parents too, and that tells you everything about how critical theory is hurting the progressive movement. We should be thankful parents are standing up and being more involved in their kids' education than ever before. It's one of the upsides of having gone through the lockdowns and nonsense with COVID. Parents actually got to see up close and personal via Zoom the nonsense their kids were being taught, and they're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore.